There's nothing to bring you to mindfulness more than a few days ago, my brother-in-law, who I'm in business with, we run a digital marketing company together, at 48 years old, collapsed and was basically dead for 17 minutes. His wife gave him CPR, and his 3 gorgeous children and his wife have moved into my house with their dog. And life has changed in the last 5 days massively for both them and for us. And it does bring you very much to mindfulness and to awareness about what's going on. So just as Andrew said, if there's anything wrong with my slides, I'm really sorry, because I didn't have anybody to help me with that today. So yeah, I'm a growth coach. I'm a strategic coach. I love the strategy. And I guess what I'd love to do is just share some coaching notes with you around how I see growth in this seemingly crazy time. Any questions you have, because I'll just go straight through 15, 18 minutes, and there won't be time for questions. Any questions you have, chuck them in the chat function. And I guess I also want to say you've got some amazing people online here. And if you're in trouble in any way, if you're actually struggling in any way, and you're maybe not even sure of the way out, for goodness sake, please just reach out. You can do it in private. Reach out to Andrew, and somebody's going to get to you really, really quickly. I just want to make that offer. So right now, what we have is, in my opinion, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to sit and figure some shit out. And the universe has tapped you on the shoulder and said, you got to stop. You got to stop, and you got to sit and think. You will not possibly get this opportunity ever again. And I guess I look at it and I say mindfulness and business and COVID, and I don't think it's any particular one of those things. I think that you shouldn't confuse business with life. I don't think it's a COVID issue. The market is the best market I've seen in 40 years. I've been working in the real estate market. It's insane in most areas that I'm working. It's absolutely crazy. So, if you're not writing business, I promise you it's not about COVID. Zarko, and I hope I haven't I've stolen one of your slides, but Zarko was saying the other day, 42% of brokers are writing less than $2 million over a 6-month period. There's nothing to do with COVID. Zero to do with COVID. It's all about you. So don't confuse the two. You're alive when you're a business. Last time I walked through my office tour, you're in life. And I think that the way you do life is the way that you will do COVID. And the way you do life is the way you will do business. So don't confuse them and don't use it for an excuse, but it is a magnificent opportunity to see what comes up for you. It puts your feelings, your thoughts, your emotions under a spotlight and makes you face them. And for a lot of us, that's something you've never bothered really to do. You've just run at 100 miles an hour. You have essentially never stopped and said, what is going on for me? So I just want to look at, and here's the first issue. Why is that not going across there? Wow, I got total shutdown here. Let me see if I can fix this. All right, so can you still see that, Andrew?
No, it's disappeared now, so we might have to share screen again.
Seriously.
So this is the joy of COVID right here. There's a good chance every person in this room's had this exact issue with a client at some stage.
Certainly not the first time I've had it. Let me just share. Participants can now see your screen. So if I do, is the bandwidth up there now? All right. So what is important to me as you're going through these interesting times is how wide is your bandwidth in terms of how you approach life. Figure that out first, work with that first, and then you'll be able to work with COVID, then you'll be able to work with your business. And I think it was Plato that talked about, you know, the pleasure on one end of the scale and pain on the other end. And what happens to most of us is we get caught in the middle. It's the reason we keep running, the reason we just keep doing and doing and doing. I'll tell you right now, my experience as a coach is because if we keep doing stuff, we don't have to feel. So our bandwidth stays quite narrow, you see. We don't have the joys at the pleasure end, and we don't even feel the pain at the other end. We stay nice and controlled. It can get very messy, very confusing. In some cases, it can get quite dark. We chuck a good dose of alcohol in there, more food than you really need, or you just keep running. Anything so you do not have to feel, you see. At the same time, on one end of the scale, we have you either open into life and open into business, or you close. And as a coach, one of the things that I use to get people from 1 million turnover to 2 million to 3 million turnover is to figure out where you stop opening and where you start closing up. This is the deal, you see. So when we look at this in terms of your business as a broker, you get crossroads along the path of your business development, yeah? And you get to decide at different levels, and I'll show you those in a minute. You get to decide at different levels just what you're going to do. And you either turn left or right and start closing down and doubling back, or you open into new territory. And the single reason that most people can't get from 500,000 a month to $1 million a month is because they close at 500,000. The reason you can't get from 4 million to 8 million a month is because you close at 4 million. It really is as simple as that. And so I see about 4 main plateaus that stick in mortgage broking. The first one is around $1 million. You get to $1 million, but most of us are then stuck in processing loans. You get a loan, you focus on that, you obsess on it because it's all about you and how well you get a loan across the line. But you get stuck on $1 million because you're stuck in the doingness. Yeah. The second one that I see is around 2 million. The volume's now started to come, but there's more processing required. And if you don't do the right thing here, if you don't open, you will stop and you'll end up doing 2 million, 500,000, 800,000, 2 million, nothing, and so on, because you're stuck in the doingness of your business. Third one I see is around $4 million. Now you've got some systems in place. This is where you need the marketing machine around you, and you need to start shifting your job role, yeah? And the last one that I love talking about, and I've worked with a lot of brokers around this, is $8 million seems to be the next plateau you get to. And here you suddenly become coach, trainer, marketer, the person looking for the next loans. This is the shift that has to happen, and you can take this as far as you want. The issue I see with brokerage is that as you try to get out of each of these plateaus, you get dragged back into the doingness of loan writing. And you will get dragged back at the point that you close down. It's not a matter of you knowing how to write loans. It's a matter of you understanding, which takes mindfulness, understanding at which point you actually close down. So if we look at the bandwidth around business, we've got growth at one end and we've got writing loans at the other. We can't even get to the middle of this one. You come into this business as a loan writer. You left the bank where you were writing loans. You come in as a loan writer and you're still doing that. You got to stop doing that and you got to start thinking about becoming a business owner, finding new deals. This is prospecting on the left-hand side versus just doing stuff. It's straight admin. Anyone doing $4 million, $8 million is done with that. But you're stuck in it. And one of the things that people say to me is, yeah, but you don't understand. I do such an amazing job for my clients of getting a loan across the line. Here's the deal. Please, if you get nothing else from what I'm saying, write this down. The system must deliver the service, not you. If you're the one delivering the service, it's not scalable. Yeah. And we can actually figure out which one of these you're suited to. You see, on the right-hand side is writing loans. That is an admin role. On the left-hand side, that's a sales role. And at Nectar, we use Caliper. We search the world to see which is the best psychological profile to use in terms of sales and admin and leadership. 20 million people have been through this Caliper psychological profile, and we can put you through that. And you can see which one of these you're suited to, and it will measure you on 22 different traits and tell you even why you're suited to admin, why you're suited to sales. You will see the battle you have. If you want that, please just put your name in the chat function and Andrew will arrange to get that done for you. I think it's $250, just to warn you. It'll be one of the best things you do in terms of understanding how you work. If you don't become aware of this, and awareness is a word that I use a lot, if you don't become aware of how you're operating, then the whole thing just becomes a struggle. You get emotionally drained by the end of the day. You're doing a job you don't even like. Everyone's telling you got to go out and meet more agents. You don't even like people. You'd rather sit in your lounge or sit in your office and just write more loans. You don't want to do that. But everyone's telling you got to do it. And it just, you become irrational, you start losing sleep. It's crazy. So think about, the possibility that you need to understand first how you operate. Now, just out of interest, the traits of top performing brokers are on the left-hand side. Ben Ike, who I've done a lot of work with, just written 25 deals in August. He is a crazy salesperson. Alex from Northern Beach is 31 million in August between two brokers. These brokers understand the difference between stuff and between finding the next deal. And if you can't make that delineation, you're going to stay on a plateau. So how do we change? What do we do to change this then? And everybody says to us, just make different choices, man. You just got to choose 4 million over 2 million. Neuroscience is now saying you don't have the chance to make different choices that you think you do. It's saying that you are programmed to be exactly where you are right now, to be stuck on that plateau of 2 million. This is how it works. You're born, and then as soon as you're born, people start to fuck you up. And it just gets worse and worse and worse as time goes by. And you get to where you are now with a narrow bandwidth, and you get stuck in a particular place. So, I love to talk about triggers, set this up. I was listening to a radio program the other day, and they asked people to ring in and tell them the lies that their grandmother told them. And the first person rang in and said, my grandmother was the most cutest, most beautiful woman you ever met. Little lady, I was 8 years old. She looked me in the eye and she said, if you sit so close to the fire, your kidneys will melt. Yeah. He said, I can't feel heat of any sort without thinking of my grandmother. Next person called in and said, my beautiful grandmother looked me in the eye and said, if you eat that whole apple, a tree will grow inside your stomach. These triggers and this stuff just goes layer after layer after layer. And we start acting in a way that is unconscious, that holds us in a particular plateau, at a particular level. And you will approach business the way you approach life, and you will approach COVID the way you approach both those things. So the point here is that you need to make different choices. You need this word. It starts with awareness. If there is no awareness, there will be no change. If you don't know that you are working unconsciously to something that somebody told you 40 years ago or 50 years ago, you will nibble around the edges of an apple and then throw it away. That's what this guy said he did. You will automatically move away from the fire. You close down. Yeah, that's how it works. And let me tell you that all amounts of loud music, jumping up and punching the air is not going to change that. If you want motivation, watch Braveheart, and it'll last for a couple of hours. That's how that works. But if you want meaningful change, if you want to really make changes that will change the way you operate in business, then it starts with awareness. Now, we have, and I'll make this available, Andrew, an awareness questionnaire where you can sit with a beer in your hand during COVID and work through this questionnaire. Again, just give us your name and your email and we'll send you the awareness questionnaire. These are just three of a lot of questions that are in there. But what I invite you to do, and please, none of this is about rolling around on the ground and crying about what happened when you were 10 years old. That's not the point. It doesn't matter whether you were breastfed on the left-hand side or the right-hand side. That's not the point of this, yeah? But it is the point of this to reflect back on where you got these triggers from, on where this stuff came from. And then asking yourself, I'm a hypnotist. And one of the things we do in regressive hypnosis is we take you back to when something happens. We bring you back out and then we say, listen, is it still appropriate that you're acting in a way based on something that somebody told you 50 years ago, something that just wasn't real? And the answer is always no, of course it's not. Awareness of that is quite often all it takes to make meaningful change in your life. So I'll give you three of these questions now. You might just like to write them down and reflect on them. First one is, who taught you about work? Who gave you your work ethic? Somebody did. They didn't sit you down and teach you about work, but just by talking about it or you watching them, you got a work ethic. Who taught you about money? Young lady in Noosa, in a group that I was working with the other day, said, oh my goodness. I said, what? She said, my mother used to say all the time, if you're making a lot of money, somebody else is suffering. How do you think that's going to go for you as you're careering down opening and going 2 million, 5 million, 8 million, 10 million a month? How's that going to work for you? You don't think that in the back of your mind, you're not going to be thinking, wow, if I'm making this much money, somebody else is suffering. And who taught you, and how do you react with delegation? This is one of the biggest things that holds people back from growing. And I guess I asked the question, was your family, the way you were brought up, what were you taught, Andrew? Were you taught to give things away to other people, to get other people to do things for you? Or were you taught, if you want something done well, you know the answer? I don't even need to say the answer. Which were you taught? Because whatever you just gave me as an answer is what's operating right now. And when you get to 5 million, and we're trying to build it, at Nectar, we're trying to build a team around you, you won't be able to delegate because of what triggers have been set up along the way, you see. You need to make peace with your mind. thoughts and all. And this is a place where I've got to now. I mean, I'm 67 years old. I've been working on it for a while, and there's no way that I'm sitting here as some pious anything. But you can make peace with your mind, that thing that terrorizes you from the minute you wake up to the minute you go to sleep. You can make peace with it. And to do that, what we need to do is head towards and so this is not voodoo, my friends. Neuroscience is now showing that if we teach you, it starts with the breath. If we teach you meditation, if we teach you how to go inside instead of looking for the answer outside, the reason you're not writing 5 million a month or 8 million a month is not on the outside. Everything starts with you. And if we teach you breath, we teach you meditation, we teach you being present to your own stories, to your own triggers, if we teach you that, then, you know, the change that you will make will be massive and absolutely permanent in a lot of cases. So when you start looking at this sort of thing, you will just fly through these levels. And I've seen this so many times. We are looking too much at the outcome. We're goal setting, which has let us down for the last 50 years. Instead of focusing on us, right where we are, we're setting goals, writing stuff down, trying harder and struggling and struggling. The answer is not anywhere near those things. The answer is to be mindful. It's to gain awareness, to go inside and to think about this stuff. So just to close, obviously it's a massive subject in 15 minutes. I just want to offer you this, that in a couple of weeks, it turns out that my wife Tracy and I've been teaching mindfulness for 30 years now. And my wife Tracy and I are running a Mindfulness for Beginners program. It's going to be aimed a lot at business people, stress, overwhelm, brokers. We'll be working with brokers and real estate agents. There's a $47 donation to Child Cancer Institute. That's Nectar's favorite charity. And it's over 4 weeks. It's an hour a week, but we'll be sending you some amazing material during those 4 weeks. You can see there the link, and Kerry will put the link in the chat function. Love to have you on board for that. It'll be fun. And a lot of people tell you you've got to breathe. A lot of people tell you you've got to be in the moment, and most have zero idea of how to do it. You come and do this few hours work with Tracy and I. We will show you how to do this and how it can impact your business. I'll take questions later, Andrew, but thank you for listening, everybody. And that's me done.
Thank you very much, Peter. Really appreciate, I guess you giving us your time today to deliver that message on. So I think a lot of it was hitting home for many of us. I know for me, delegation is not my strong point, as you well know. So yeah, definitely something I know that I can look at a lot more during COVID rather than just work longer hours. Just want to quickly introduce our next guest, Zarko. I'm just going to quickly hand over to you, Zarko, and you can take it from here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Andrew, and thanks, Peter, for sharing those thoughts with us today. So I'm going to share my screen, there's a lot of noise in our industry, and there's a lot of noise in society in general. So 2021 has been a noisy year, and it was following the probably most noisy year we've had in a long time in 2020. And a lot of the things we know and love from 2020 are back for 2021, including lockdown for a lot of people on the call today. So there's a lot of noise in society in general. And as Andrew mentioned today, that noise is being caused by the virus. So the virus is still here. We thought it was when we celebrated New Year's that the virus would be gone, but no, it is back, and it is back stronger than ever. So I want to talk a little bit about the virus today, and I want to talk a little bit about the impact of COVID on our industry as a whole and your individual business specifically. Now, I do need to read this medical disclaimer because I am talking about medical issues today. I need to stress that all content shared today is created and published for information purposes only. It is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice and should not be relied on as health or personal advice. So I will encourage you to always seek the guidance of your doctor or other qualified health professional with any questions you may have regarding your health or a medical condition. So I need to stress today that I am not a doctor. I also need to stress this person's not a doctor. I need to stress that this person's not a doctor and that this person's not a doctor. Although I did get a text message from Craig the other day. I didn't know how he got my number, but there you go. So we're talking about the virus today, and the virus has an impact on your business for this financial year. So the way you plan your business is going to be different this financial year than it has been in the past. And it will be even different to the last financial year because now we know a little bit of what to expect. And I want to pose some questions to get you thinking about how your business will flourish in the current environment all the way through to June 2022. And I'm not here to tell you what to do today, but I am here to give you some options to consider. And we're talking about planning, we're talking about thriving, we're talking about growing, and we're talking about being together. Now, my first question is this. When you think of your business and the way you interact with your clients, some of them are going to want to be together as soon as possible. They're going to rush back to face-to-face interaction, and some won't. So understanding your customer's preferred style is going to be a recipe for success this financial year. And that brings me to the next question. We love simple processes as customers. As consumers, we thrive and we seek out processes that are friction-free. Now, there is a lot of friction in the lending process that is out of your control. And as we saw earlier this year, some lenders more than others cause friction in our industry with less than quality turnaround times. But if you think about the processes that are in your control, you think about the aspects of the customer experience that are in your control, a really important question and an opportunity this financial year is to ask yourself, what elements of the customer experience can I further simplify? Because that is what clients are looking for. Their world, their lives are hard enough now as it is. So they don't want these engagements with professional service providers to add to that friction. Now, earlier this year, the MFAA engaged the middle speaker as well as the two bookend speakers. So the man on the right is Mike Felton, the CEO of the MFAA. The lady on the left is Adelaide Timbrell, who's a senior economist with ANZ. But the man in the middle is Mark McCrindle. And Mark McCrindle is a social researcher. And at this event earlier this year, Mark McCrindle talked about the social and consumer sentiment trends in 2021. Now, if you missed that event live, you can access Mark McCrindle's talk as an MFAA member. All you need to do is log into the MFAA Learning Hub, go to the home page and look for business sentiment, business interaction, and you'll find this talk that Mark McCrindle delivered for the MFAA on social trends and consumer sentiment in a best interest duty environment. And what Mark talks about there is 7 mega trends that clients, that consumers are now expecting from service providers. And the reason why people in 2021 go with one service provider and not another. And one of those is systems, as Peter mentioned. You've got to make your customer service people-proof. As Peter mentioned, it can't be about you, and that's one of the trends that Mark McCrindle talks about in that talk. The third question I want to ask you is think about what the client gives you in terms of their deepest, darkest financial secrets. The big element and the big winning factor you can deliver is trust. So a question you can ask yourself is, do you need to strengthen your data management, privacy, and cybersecurity? 2021 and 2020 before it were the most scammed years on record. We were the victims of more digital scams than any other time in history. And there's not a day that goes by that I don't get a text message, not from Craig Kelly, but from someone who says, please click on this link to refresh your account, or please listen to this voicemail, and the word voicemail is spelt incorrectly. So there's so much phishing going on, and there's so much cyber security threats happening at this point in time, that if you feel this is a strong point in your business and in your system, I'm going to encourage you to consider promoting that to the wider world, because this is a big factor that people are going to look for. They want to be able to trust you. If you have something as simple as two-step verification, don't keep that a secret. I would use that as something you market to let the world know that you actually do this. This will be a business winner this financial year. Now, to help you identify some of the possible risks and threats in your business, the MFAA has put together this webinar that you can access. It was broadcast live in April, but you can access a recording of it. And it's all about securing mortgage broking businesses from cyber threats. So please do review that if you haven't already done so. And the fourth question I want to ask you today is, when you think of the processes within your business, what can you remove yourself from and automate? Automate is a big attractive factor for consumers in 2021. So there are 4 questions I want to ask you to consider today. And I want to ask you to think of, where does all of this sit in the grand scheme of things? And to help you with automation, we've gone to brokers in the marketplace that are already doing this and asked them how do they actually do it. So again, you can find a talk from an award-winning broker who is sharing how in his business he implemented automation, because there's opportunities for us. Now, like you, I'm sure you've been to a lot of Zooms over the last 18 months, and sprinkled in amongst those Zooms are some face-to-face events. And I've been to my fair share of face-to-face events in my career in the mortgage and finance broking industry. Now, I've been to aggregator events, I've been to lender events, I've been to events run by property companies. And I've been to events run by a particular property company called Blue Wealth Property. And Blue Wealth Property is owned and operated and led by a man named Dr. Tony Hayek. And when Dr. Tony presents, he walks around with a 1 meter ruler. And when he wants to make a salient point, he literally slaps the ruler into his palm to make a point. Now, when I first saw this, I thought that's very interesting, a great little technique to keep people's attention spans focused and keep people off their phone. A nice little reminder of the days of corporal punishment, perhaps. So when I went to the second event, I saw Dr. Tony again present with that 1 meter ruler. And I asked Dr. Tony about this 1 meter ruler, and I said, that's a great little technique to keep people on their toes, because no one wants to be reminded of being hit with the ruler. And he said, no, Zarko, the ruler's not for that at all. The ruler's for me. And I said, well, how's the ruler for you? And he said, well, what the ruler does, it keeps me in check. And I said, well, tell me, how does it keep you in check? And he said, well, I expect to live to about 100. I think I will make the century. I eat well, I look after myself, I take care of my body. So this ruler represents my lifespan. Each line represents a year of my life. So if I'm having a bad presentation today, if I absolutely fluff my lines, Zarko, show me where that mistake is on this ruler. If I absolutely have the worst week ever in the office, everything goes wrong, show me where that week is on the ruler. And as a result, it gives me the opportunity to look at the bigger picture. It gives me the opportunity to keep perspective. And that's what I want to ask you today. With all that is going on in society as a whole and in our industry in general, I want to ask you this question. What doors do you want to open in your world this financial year? What opportunities do you want to embark on? And I'm going to ask you this question. Where is the opportunity right now? Peter mentioned in his 40 years, he's never seen a market like this. So there's opportunity there. But before you can see an opportunity, you have to be looking for opportunity. Think of opportunity almost as remember those magic eye paintings they used to sell in the late 90s, early 2000s in homeware shops like Copper Art. But you had to look at that painting a certain way for the magic eye mystery to be revealed. Because if you looked at it too hard or you concentrated too much, it didn't work. You had to relax your brain a certain amount for the three dolphins to jump out of the seascape, as it were. Well, opportunity is a lot like that. And I know it seems basic, but sometimes we're clouded and washed over with so much going wrong that we miss the opportunity. Now, I want to talk about an opportunity we all have now, and that's the best interest duty. And yes, there's a compliance aspect to the best interest duty obligation, and yes, there is more work to do. No one's disputing that. But this is yet another compelling reason consumers should use brokers. Because in the past, we've talked about you should use a broker because they deliver more choice. You should use a broker because they've got more experience. You should use a broker because they're more convenient than any other provider. And all of that remains true. But you can now add the best interest duty obligation to that. This is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to broadcast to your database and the marketplace in general of the reasons why they should deal with you and no one else. We've never been able to say this before, that you should use a broker because we look after you first and foremost. That's what the best interest duty is all about. So to help you market this opportunity, the MFAA has put together this best interest duty marketing guide. So as an MFAA member, you can access this guide, and there are 50 marketing slogans you can use today to broadcast to the marketplace and your database specifically of compelling reasons to use you and not someone else. Now, the only caveat with these 50 marketing slogans is I'm going to encourage you to not change a word. And the reason for that is we at the MFAA have run the slogan past not one, but two marketing firms to make sure everything is kosher, legit, and won't get you sued. So please use the slogans as they are. Where can you use the slogans? You can use them anywhere you like. You can use them as your email signature. You can use them on printed marketing material, digital marketing material, social media, you name it. This is an example of a broker who's using it on Instagram, and she's chosen the slogan, I act for you, and a lender sells you their products. Quite a powerful slogan. So continued education is going to be a big part of this financial year as we work towards June 2022. Because in June 2022, the entire remuneration of mortgage broking is up for review. So I'm going to encourage you to stay in touch with important communications around legislation and get them from trusted sources. So the association you're a member of, or your aggregator or franchise group, depending on who you're a member of. if you're a member of the MFAA, you can access standalone modules on all of the legislation that's coming through the Learning Hub. This is the standalone module on the mortgage broker best interest duty and conflict priority rule. You can see it's PDF based, it's all case study based, so it gives you an opportunity to understand how this impacts you. And with any of these modules, you have the opportunity to test your understanding of the content. So you can do an assessment at the end. So as you can see on the screen, I've done the assessment there and I scored 19.5 out of 20. I think it's always important to leave some room for improvement. And then you get a certificate at the end of that you can show a lender down the track, should they require that, as they start to be added to your lender pack. Now, get involved in professional development opportunities as much as you can. So things like today that Andrew and the team from Nectar have organised are a great start. And look out for innovation and ideas. We need to stick together. We need to have that view towards 2022. We do need to think about things differently. Now, we would never wish COVID on society as a whole. However, COVID has been good for the mortgage and finance broking industry. And here's one of the reasons why. When other service providers retreated, and reduced their offerings, mortgage and finance brokers stepped up their offering and helped more and more people. We were more timely and more relevant than other distribution channels, and that's why our market share is growing, and that's why the numbers of settled dollars is growing as well. Our neighbours love us, but we need to continue to be relevant to them. So 4 things I want to ask you to consider. Consider how you can transform your business from a digital point of view. How can you identify opportunities? What education needs to continue in your world? And can you be more relevant in your community? Now, there is a lot of noise out there, but we're very well placed. But we will need to think about things differently to protect what we've got and also to harness and heed the call for the opportunities that await as we progress through this financial year. So with that, I'll unshare my screen and I'll throw back to Andrew.
Thank you very much, Zarko. There was some really good content in there. Just one of the things that you touched on that I think is very important to our industry right now is the fact that we are becoming a target of cybercrime.
Absolutely.
And it may seem like an expense to add another $20 per month to the actually as a broker you already pay so much for all these little subscriptions, but spending an extra $20, $30 to protect your business, I think is vital. And I've seen 3 cases alone in the last 3 months where businesses have been hit. One was a solicitor's business, 2 were broker businesses. And if you're lucky enough for your personal indemnity insurance to actually pay out on someone losing $60,000, $70,000, you're still looking at an increase on your premium of anywhere up to $4,000 a year. So I'd say it's a lot cheaper to spend $20, $30 a month to make sure you're protected, and then of course advertise that to your audience so they know that they can trust you. It's a lot cheaper than spending an extra $4,000 on the insurances each year. Really good, Zarko. Thank you so much, and it's always great to work with the MFAA. Just going to hand over now to Neil Butler. Neil, it's great to have you on board. Looking forward to what you have to share. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Andrew. And I'm wondering whether you can see my screen. Can you see that?
Yeah, we can.
Is it
Neil?
a transimaginative mindset? Okay, I'm going to pull that over there so I can see it. We good? Yep.
All good.
Okay, so thanks for the invitation. I'm promising you one thing, and that is you won't walk away with answers today. Hopefully what you'll walk away from me is A, where did he get his haircut? And B, what on earth is transformagination? And I want this to be a challenge. I want you to walk away scratching your head saying, how on earth do I apply that to my world? Well, to start off with, I think I need to tell you that I am a great supporter of the great philosophers, and I'm going to share some of the words of the great philosophers of the 20th century. Now, before you switch off and go, is he fair income? Yeah, I am. Here are some of the great philosophers of the 20th century. Barry Gibb said, conventionality belongs to yesterday. It was from the song Grease. Neil Diamond, used to be's don't count anymore. Jim Morrison, the time to hesitate is through. Bob Dylan, the times they are a-changing. Elvis Presley, it's now or never. And Seal, we're never going to survive unless we get a little crazy. Now, to me, that is, if that is not a driver for your business, then I don't know what is. And then along comes the late, great, legendary Beatle, John Lennon, and says, imagine. And that's the thrust of what we're talking about here today. I invented this thing called transformagination, which is why Andrew can't say it easily at the start. Transformaginative, when you trademark a word you make up, there's all of that, the verbs and the adverbs and the adjectives and all that kind of stuff you've got to put together as well. Transformagination is the bringing together of two words quite clearly. One of those being transformation, the other one imagination. Imagination, another one of the great 20th century philosophers. A lot of people, think he got his hairstyle inspiration from me, but also think of him as a physicist. There's a bloke called Albert Einstein. He was actually a philosopher who taught physics rather than the other way around in my mind. And he said, imagination is more important than knowledge. Now, when you're talking about one of the great brains of the 20th century, I reckon if he says imagination is more important than knowledge, I reckon we've got something to deal with there. Think about your standard corporate meeting room. Everyone's been in them before, whether it's at one of your lenders or whoever. If we want to change that room, we'll paint the wall green. And we'll put out a comms on the Friday saying, hey, over the weekend, the cleaners, the painters are going to be in, they're going to come in, they're going to paint the room. You can't use it till Tuesday. That's change, and that's change management. Transformation is taking that same room and converting it into a cafe. The fundamental reason for that room existing has changed. But transformagination, doing the both imagination component and the transformation bit, is what happens when the building burns down and you've got to start again. It's a bit like when you see people, my screen has just disappeared off the sharing. Has that come back to you guys? You got that still? Yeah, you can still see it. Okay, that's good. No, my screen's just gone a bit weird on me, that's all. So people who are involved in a bushfire, a tragic time, their house burns down, a number of them rebuild on the same spot, but do they build the same house? No. The kids have moved out, so I don't need the rumpus room anymore. We're going to bring the house forward, put a pool in the backyard. Once you've been there and you've got the completely clean canvas to start again, that's when transformagination comes in. Without limitations, without constraints, and without legacy thinking. Now, I know that the industry is very heavily constrained by regulations and legislation, all that kind of stuff, and so it should be. The last thing I want is to have somebody looking after my money in some way, shape or form, and there's no regulation. So park the fact that you've got to work within regulations. But who said a mortgage broker needs to have someone who, is the front person, does all the thinking and has two admin assistants? Why is that what a broker does? Who said you have to be part of a chain like Nectar? Who says that you need to be a member of the MFAA? Watch me alienating my co-speakers at the moment. You don't have to. You need to go back and say, if I was starting again, how would I do it? And this is where transformagination comes into play. So some things about transformagination, if you are fair income, it's all encompassing. You can't say, I think I'll transformaginate what the reception area of my office looks like. I can't transformaginate what the forms that we use are. It's all encompassing. It is confronting. If someone comes in and says, Andrew, I really don't like the way you do your job, you go, hang on a minute, whoa, pull back. But to an extent, that's what transformagination is all about. It's about saying the way we used to do it is no longer the way forward. It's challenging because someone's same thing as confronting, I guess. It is intentional. I wrote a blog. Watch me do a little bit of an ad here for my podcast, Untypical Thoughts, untypicalthoughts.com.au. They're all little 5 and 6 minute episodes of this sort of crazy stuff that I tend to talk about. One of them is change is never an accident. Sorry, transformation is never an accident. You can't transform by going, oops, hang on, it's now a cafe. So this is something that's intentional. You need to put aside time, and it's all about strategy, as Peter was talking about earlier. It's also long-term. You can't transformaginate over the next week and a half. You need to say, what does this thing look like in 2 years' time? What does this thing look like in 5 years' time? I'm fortunate enough to have a really good friend who is a broker with one of the other organizations, Andrew, sorry, and she is renowned nationally for being, I think, the regional broker of the year in some awards or another. You might know who I'm talking about. I live in Geelong, if that helps. And I was talking to her one day and she said, but how do we take this to the next level? Right? That's the thinking we've got to do. Not how do I, as Peter was saying earlier, move it from 1 to 2. It's about saying, how do I completely change what I'm doing? Yeah, go on, throw the baby out with the bathwater. There's plenty of other babies out there. Okay, so tackle it intentionally and long-term. And of course, it needs to be strategic. This ain't for the faint-hearted. If you're feeling a little bit queasy at the minute, I'd suggest you keep doing what you're doing and don't change. Was it in excess? Don't change a thing. I think it was out of 1982. So that's what transformation is. It's all those things. But you can't do this with your existing mindset. Already, I can see the 82 people who are watching this going, this bloke is nuts. Well, guess what? You need to be nuts. Seal said so. We're never going to survive if we don't get a little crazy. So these are some things you can deliberately do in your business to change to a transformaginative mindset. See, Andrew, I can say it. He said confidently, pressing over on that key. Come on, you can do it. I'm in real strife now. Oh, here we go. Thank you. Nothing is impossible. If you truly believe transformagination is what you need to do, anything is possible. There was a bloke sitting in a dormitory in, I think, Boston in the 90s, and he said, I got this idea. I reckon if we got together, we could have this sort of online social media thing. I think I'll call it Bookface. No, that won't work. I know, let's call it Facebook. Who could have imagined? We go back to 1958, and of course, I don't go back to 1958, but someone said, we're going to be the first country in the world to put someone on the moon. They all thought he was nuts, right? And then John F. Kennedy came along and said, we will do it by the end of the decade. And they did, right? Galileo dropped his balls over the side of the Leaning Tower of Pisa, if you'll pardon the expression. Everyone told him it was crazy that you could have a 1 kilogram and a 2 kilogram weight hit the ground at the same time. Unless you step outside and start to think that this is really different, you're not going to get anywhere. Get rid of the word should. Now, how many times do you say we should do this? Or someone has told you, oh, I wouldn't do that, you should be doing this. Should implies that you have got some kind of predetermined measurement against which you should measure your activity. Get rid of it. So what should we do, replaced with what could we do, suddenly the mindset has changed dramatically. What other things we could do? Don't permit people in your organization to have crazy ideas, demand that they do. Have a crazy ideas board. The crazier, the better. Instead of getting it to the end of the month and saying you wrote more loans than anybody else, instead, I want to see awards in businesses that say you came up with the craziest idea of the month. Doesn't mean you'll necessarily implement that idea, but at least get into the mindset of crazy thinking is a really good thing to do. Forbid apostrophes of contradiction, if I could say it. Contraction, not contradiction, I beg your pardon, contraction. An apostrophe of contraction is where you take a word like can and not and make it can't, will and not and make it won't. That sort of, not Zarko's, not that kind of apostrophe where it's a possessive. The one where you chop words down. Get rid of them. Because I can't think of one of those that is not a negative. Should have, could have, would have, won't, don't, didn't, right? They're all negatives. If you insist upon people having to actually say the word not, I might not, I should have, not should of, by the way, I should have, I did not, suddenly it's a deliberate choice to be negative. So get rid of apostrophes of contraction. This one will upset some of you listening, I have no doubt. Don't let the old fogies make the decisions. Old fogies are in charge of most places because they've seen it all before and they know which levers to pull to bring it back on course. So if you think about most of the organizations, the big organizations, they're 55-year-old blokes who have been in the industry for 35 years. They're making the decisions. They're the ones with the so-called great ideas. No, they're not. They're just taking last week's and putting, it's like when mum used to get what was left over and throw it and make a new stew. No, we want young people. We want the young movers and shakers to come up with the ideas because they're not constrained by what's happened in the past. That's really important. And the the 5 words that I want to talk about, and sadly, I've left one of them white. Should have spell checked it, shouldn't I? If you look in the dictionary, aspiration, boldness, creativity, and determination all come before experience. So whilst those things are important, experience is absolutely important. I can't sit here and talk to brokers if I haven't told anyone this yet, Andrew, have I? I was the transformation lead for Podium. Oh, look, all the numbers go, they've all gone down. You can't go through and not have experience, but things like aspiration, boldness, creativity, determination, they all come before experience in terms of importance in transformative conversations. I want to let Jennifer have a crack at this because we're a bit short on time. So I'm going to just pull you through to one last slide. And, so somebody actually is driving this. That's why I can't do it. Makes sense now. In fact, I'll throw in a fourth website if I can. Transformagination is something I've just recently trademarked and I'm still trying to work out what it looks like. I think it's around running seminars. I think it's around going into businesses and change the way they do things. If you want to know about Transformagination, go to www.transformagination.co. If you want to know about what I do and what Untypical does, www.untypical.com.au. The third one I'll throw in there is www.untypicalthoughts.com.au. And there are a series, there's about, 60 or 70 episodes, 5 or 6 minutes of me talking about ideas that come, they've got that transformative feel about it. So you'd be more than welcome to subscribe to that. The decision I made on making them 6 or 7 minutes long was you go and place your coffee order. Remember when you used to go and sit in a cafe and have coffee? You go and order your coffee, and while the barista is making the coffee and putting it in the cup and handing it over, you've listened to an episode. That's the duration of them. And finally, if I can, and I did ask permission of Andrew before I put this one up, Heart a Day. Every year, there are 52 Saturdays in the year. This year, there's only 51. Heart a Day, the 23rd of October, is a day where I will be working on a 12-hour radio shift on, hang on, I've got to point ahead the right way, GoRadio.live, an online radio station that I run. And on that day, we will be talking to heart experts, heart health experts, and we will be playing some great, great music, trying to raise $10,000 for the Heart Foundation. Now, in Australia, an Australian dies every 12 minutes of heart disease, and it is Australia's biggest killer. On those stats, if you haven't already got someone in your family who's been touched by heart disease, there's a fair chance that it will happen at some stage soon. So we are doing everything we can on Heart a Day. We are doing silent auctions where you can buy a request for our 80s music party that's happening for $50. Every dollar we earn goes to the Heart Foundation. So if you would please share that. This is going to be absolutely pointless if we don't have people looking at. We're on Facebook at Heart a Day, look for Heart a Day. We're on LinkedIn, look for Heart a Day. And of course, the website, www.heartaday.com.au. It's all about heart health and fun. Thanks, guys.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Neil. I know Zarko would have enjoyed some of those quotes from philosophers. I've been at a few training sessions where you've come out with some of your own, Zarko. It was very, very good. Look, thank you so much, Neil. Look, there's something that you talked about in that presentation that really hit me hard, and hard enough that I feel like I have to say something. And we've talked about it internally with some of the people that I work with, where we're on the verge of seeing the biggest transfer of wealth in our industry from one generation to another generation. And I feel like you gave us permission, Neil, and it's actually part of the inspiration for why I run think tanks, is I really want to see us take ownership of the direction of where we're taking this business and this industry. And it is up to us. This industry will be at some point disrupted by someone, somewhere, or something, some new technology coming in. And it's important that we have that awareness, that we've got a heads up and we're looking out and we're having conversations around what the future could look like and where can we take this and what can we do with this. That's part of the reason why we run think tanks. It's I think sometimes in this industry we've become quite insular within our inner crowd of what aggregator we work for or what lender we work for. And it's important that we continue to have these conversations where we talk about what's going on. And I know I've worked in banking, I've worked in aggregation, I've worked in franchise, I've been a self-employed business coach. right across that spectrum, the thing that rings true to me is the best indicator of what is really going on in that industry comes from the front line. It comes from brokers out there talking to customers on a daily basis. And if there's ways that we can do things better or easier, or technology that we can embrace, we need to. And just to plug the next think tank, the reason the topic came up is there's things that's happening right now on the outer edges of our industry that if we don't start to embrace as brokers and say, you know what, we're going to embrace this technology and we're going to make the likes of Ubank or ING or the direct credit decisioning from our own laptop. If we don't embrace these things that are starting to come on the peripheral, we're going to actually miss out and be disrupted by someone else. I don't want CBA, I'm okay with naming names, I don't want CBA taking market share and taking this technology and using that to make an easier experience for customers to go direct. We need to be the ones who embrace these new technologies to make these things as easy as possible for our customers to do business with us. And to your point, Neil, let's sit and imagine what this industry could look like. And that's not up to Zarko, it's not up to Peter, it's not even up to the heads of aggregators. I say this with all respect, God forbid if it is up to the heads of some aggregators. It's up to us as brokers on the front line, talking to our customers, knowing what our customers want and need, and making sure our voices are heard, and not being afraid to talk about it with your cousins down the road who may be at a different aggregator or a different broker. Let's be willing to share our best ideas, put our best foot forward, inspire each other to make those changes that we need to make to propel this industry forward. I think it's important. And now is the best time ever that we've had to do this.
Can I just add one thing, Andrew, and that is every organisation has a chief risk officer. I was working for NAB when I was doing the podium stuff, and there was someone really, really high paid at the top of the tree somewhere. But even an organisation's got two people. Someone's responsible for risk. You're not doing enough until the chief risk officer has something lands on their desk and he says or she says, you want to do what? Because until it gets to that point, you're not pushing the boundaries. You will never learn to swim if you hang on to the edge of the pool. There's another cliche, and I think another blog episode on Untypical Thoughts. I'm going to shut up now.
Very good, very good. No, thank you, Neil. You got me really fired up, so I appreciate that. So as I mentioned, we're going to skip the break, but I think it's important that we hear from Jennifer. And we've had three very eloquent speakers who have. You can tell are quite energetic, and now I'm handing over to poor Jennifer, who's been quite unwell with pneumonia. And I just really appreciate the fact that you've taken up the time and you've added and willing to add your value to this conversation. And she had some really good things to share, some great resources as well that I think are not only good for us as business owners, but also for some of the business owners that we're talking to on an everyday basis. So thank you so much, Jennifer. Really appreciate it.
Oh, that's okay. Thanks, Andrew. So hopefully everybody can actually hear me. And I do apologise about my son just jumping in the screen then, because he just had no idea what I was doing. And that's the joys of working from home, I guess. So,
Yes, it is.
I'm actually going to have a go at this screen share. I don't know that I'm going to know how to do it because I usually have people in my office help me, but we'll give it a go. So I think I need to share screen too.
Yeah, big green button at the bottom.
Yeah, I've hit that. I was just going to pick the
right screen.
I don't think my presentation's open. Hang on. Sorry. Like I said, new to me.
While she's doing that, I just want to encourage everyone, if you do have questions for any of our guests today, it looks like we may not get to do an extensive Q&A today, please feel free to start putting them into the comment section. We will make sure that we get back to you. And any of the resources or tools that have been made available today, we'll make sure that we send you a follow-up email just so you know where to go for those things. So thank you. Back to yourself, Jennifer.
Sure. Can you just let me know if you can see that screen?
Yes, we can. It looks great.
Right. Thank you so much. So I'm going to keep this fairly brief because I just don't know how much longer my voice is going to last today. So I'll just quickly go through some of the financial support that we do have around for businesses. Now, it may not also be for you, but it may be for some of your clients. And just around the the increased lockdowns and the stay-at-home orders that came about because of the current Delta variant. A lot of the state governments and federal governments have put some packages in place. Obviously, Victoria and New South Wales have most of those packages, both of which at the moment are currently funded jointly by federal government and the state government. And whilst all this funding has been very welcomed by everybody, the constant changes to those and the requirements to get access to this support has changed quite a lot, and it has actually made it quite difficult for everybody to keep up. So I guess my heads up for that is, if you've had a look and thought you weren't eligible, have another look, and because you could very well be eligible with the changes that have come about. So I'm not going to go into each state because each state has different rules, but I'm just going to give you a bit of a snapshot so that you sort of know what's around. If you need to access any of that information, then of course, I've got a resource that I can share with everybody, which does detail all the different facilities that are available in each state and where you need to go to actually access that information. So if you just keep in mind that this is only a snapshot, and we will go through the rest of it. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that on the 28th of March 2021, the federal government did put an end to what was JobKeeper, which got us all through COVID-1. And at this stage, they're saying they're never going to bring that back. And I would think that's probably going to be where it is as well, because they've put in a lot of things in the state, so they'll let the state pick up a lot more of that burden. So the first ones I want to go through quickly is your Commonwealth ones, and these are available to anybody in any state. The Commonwealth disaster payment is one that's dealt with through Centrelink, or as it's now called, Services Australia. It is a moving target of how much is being paid and things like that. So it did actually originally get announced on the 3rd of June 2021, and that was in response to the Victorian lockdown. It's since been extended, and it now covers anybody pretty much in Australia, as long as you can show that you have been impacted by COVID-19. So the amount that each person gets and what factors they need to take into account is very different for every area, and it is on a person by person and a case by case. So, for all of you guys out there that go, oh, my next door neighbour was getting $6,000 and so I should be able to get that, it's not necessarily the case. So currently, as it stands, a person, if they've lost somewhere between 8 and 20 hours, will be entitled to $450 a week from Centrelink or Services Australia. Initially, this was $325, then it went to $375, and now it's the $450. So you can see what I'm talking about being a moving target. And if somebody's lost more than 20 hours a week, they're actually entitled to $750 a week. And that's gone up from $500, then $600, and then to where it is now. A lot of people think that needs to be a paid employment, and it's not. Any sole trader can also apply for that. Just means that if you're a sole trader, you can't apply for any other funding within your state. So on the 9th of August, the legislation was passed to make this Commonwealth disaster payment tax-free. So that's a good thing, that at least you're not getting tax come out of that $450 or the $750. The problem we've got now, though, is that people that did their tax returns nice and early, but so before that 9th of August date, may need to go back and amend their tax returns, because they will have classed that income as assessable income and paid tax on it. At this stage, the tax office haven't told us if they're going to do that automatically or if you need to lodge a tax return. The only other thing I want to say here about the disaster payment is you make that claim through your MyGov or through Services Australia directly. Sorry, I might just grab water. So the only two things that the other government support packages are is the support package for childcare services. So if you're impacted and you have your children in childcare, there is a possibility that you can get reduced payments for those. So again, I'm just going to put that out there. I'm not going to go too much into it. The other one, which I'm sure you all know about, is the small to medium enterprise recovery loan scheme. If you don't know anything about that, I suggest you all jump on and do a bit of reading. There's certainly been a couple of changes, and there was a change made only last week, so on the 25th of August. They removed a previous condition that to access that recovery loan that you had to have got JobKeeper in COVID lockdown 1. That's now been removed, and it's now available to anybody that's in those small to medium enterprise ones. And again, that's a good one potentially for yourselves or any of your clients that you're working with. And I guess the only thing that I want to make mention there is that it is being backed by the government, and they will back 80% of the loan, which is a nice little, I guess, backstop in case something does go wrong and you don't recover from that. So I'm just going to leave the government ones there. I'm going to quickly jump into the New South Wales support packages. And I'm just going to make a statement that I'm a New South Wales accountant, so I know this one really well. I don't know the other states' ones so much, but know enough that I can give you an overview. So at this stage, New South Wales has 3 different packages available. There's the COVID-19 Business Grant, and that was to cover small businesses from the 26th of June to the 17th of July, and that was for the very first 3 weeks of Sydney lockdown. It was a one-off grant, and you had to show that you lost more than 30% of your income for a minimum of 2-week period in either the 19-year or the 20-year as your comparison. So it could be more than 3 weeks, but it had to be a minimum. Sorry, could be more than 2 weeks, but 2 weeks was the minimum to do that comparison. Of course, that brought about some issues that if people were new to business and they didn't have a 19 and a 20 year to use, they then made some changes and said that you could use the 2 weeks immediately prior to lockdown and compare that to a 2-week period in that 3-week period to 17th of July. So if you lost 30% of your income, you could get a $7,500 payment, business grant payment. If you were 50%, it was $10,500. And if you lost more than 70%, you could get $15,000. There was the only catch with that one is that your aggregated income, so that means your income from that business plus all your other businesses you're associated with, your income had to be between 75,000 and 50 million. So for all those little small business owners that were less than 75 in the 2020 year, unfortunately, it wasn't available. And it is only the 2020 year you can use as a comparison there. So that one's finished. And then they brought out 2 new grants, which kicked in from the 17th of July. And they actually cover right through to whenever lockdown is going to finish. At this stage, they flagged that it's the 27th of August, but as we know, that hasn't happened, unfortunately. So JobSaver is where your income is between that 75 and the 50 million again. And that will pay you up to 40% of your wages. And it's based not on what your wages are at the time, but what your wages were in the last BAS lodged before the 26th of June. So they learned a little bit in the last COVID one, and they left it open to the March. And of course, everybody threw in a whole heap of directors' wages and all those things and increased what they got in tax, and all of a sudden got a lot more. So they actually are basing it now on the last BAS that you lodged prior to 26th of June, which is when lockdown started. The other one, which is the micro business grant, that will cover for business owners that are less than 75,000, but still more than 30,000. So anybody below that 30,000, the New South Wales government's not considering that as being a business, and you need to get one of the government support packages through the disaster relief. So the micro grant will give you $1,500 a fortnight, and that matches the disaster payment from the federal government. So that one is, you can do either or. Most of the ones that are in the micro business grant will mostly be sole traders anyway. I don't know too many businesses that are only earning $75,000 and have wages, let alone all the other costs that come out. So that's why it's been matched to the government disaster recovery. So if you've got employees, it's probably, you have to stand them down and ask them to go collect from Centrelink as well. So the other things I'm just going to mention here, just so that you're aware of it. New South Wales has offered payroll tax concessions to any employers that are paying payroll tax, and they've also offered tax deferrals. I'm not going to go into any of that here because that's a fairly significant business, and if you're paying payroll tax in New South Wales, so I'll just leave it there as information for you. So I'm just going to quickly glance over South Australia firstly here. And this is what you're going to find. There'll be different names, different things. Mostly they're all going to be that you've got to fit between that 75,000 and 50 million. And it is also that it'll have to fit between you have to fit with that 30% downturn in your income. The Adelaide one actually closes very soon. I think it might be this week. So if anybody here is impacted in South Australia, you need to jump on and get your application sorted as soon as you can. It's $1,000, I think, if you're a non-employing person, and it's $3,000 a week if you're an employing applicant. The only other thing I want to mention there is that South Australia did put in a support grant, which is a CBD one. So if you rent commercial space in South Australia, in Adelaide, and it has got to be in the CBD, you potentially can get another $1,000 grant. So again, that one closes fairly soon. So you might want to jump on that if you rent commercial premises in South Australia. And the only other one there, I'm not going to bring that up here, is a major event support grant. And obviously that one there is for anybody that holds major events. Victoria's support. I would have run out of enough screens if I had to put the Victorian support systems that are there. There is something like about 24 different grants that you can potentially access. A lot of them are very minimised to areas, like there's ones that's the alpine areas, there's ones that's just the CBD and things like that. But I do have, as I said, a list of what grants are there and where they can be accessed, and just a little bit of a summary about them. It is a 22-page document, I'm sorry, but if anybody wants to throw their name and their email address into the chat room, I'm sure Andrew won't mind getting that out to any of you. And at least then you've got somewhere to start or where to start the process. ACT, they've got two different types of payments. So they've got a grant of $10,000 for employing businesses and $4,000 for non-employing businesses. And again, it's a 75,000 revenue up to the 50 million. Their catch is that you had to be registered for GST prior to April 2021. And of course, there's the usual 30% downturn that we've seen everywhere. The other one that ACT does have is they have a hardship grant, and it's a minimum of $10,000 credits, not payment, but it is a credit to cover payroll tax, utilities, rates, and other selected charges. And it's available for businesses between $30,000 and $10 million in revenue.
Jennifer, I just need to mention it is 2:30, and I do understand that some of you may have other appointments that you have to run to. I just want to, if you do want to jump off now, and I'm also thinking about our guests as well. If you do need to go, feel free to. I don't want to hold you up any longer. I really appreciate your time. But we will finish off this as well, Jennifer. I'll just let you go. I just wanted to make sure people knew and that they had permission to leave if they needed to leave.
Put your hand up to go to the toilet. I've only got a couple more things because the rest of them are only small anyway. Sorry. So the Northern Territory has 2 types of payment assistance. It's $1,000 for eligible applicants. And again, there's not much on that, but then there's not much lockdown and downturn in Northern Territory either. Tasmania has a hardship grant, which gives you between $2,000 and $10,000. Again, 20% decline, and it's a comparative period prior to 26th of June. And that one closes in a week's time. I do know that. So I don't think we had anybody from Tassie, but if anyone knows anybody, they've got a week to make a claim. Queensland, God bless your little cotton socks. They've got a grant similar to all the others, 75,000 turnover, reduction of 30%. But theirs has only commenced from the 31st of July because they actually didn't go into lockdown prior to that date. So these businesses may be eligible for a $5,000 grant. And then they've got the tourism one, which, as we imagine, the tourism's been knocked around in Queensland. So again, I don't think many of you would be needing to make that application, but I'm just putting it out there for knowledge. Western Australia has 2 types of assistance, or had. I believe they are now closed. So if you're from Western Australia and you haven't made a claim, you've probably missed out. And so just on a final note, all I want to say is there is plenty of help out there if you or any of your customers are impacted by COVID-19. So please, access that report thing that I've got for you, which is a good start. Seek out somebody who actually knows. Don't listen to your next door neighbour's uncle's niece, because they probably have no idea what they're talking about. Have a chat to your accountant. That's a good place to start. If you're not happy or your accountant hasn't done it, reach out. We've got plenty of accountants that can help you through, particularly if you're in New South Wales. But if you are in any of those other states, we can direct you to where to go. And then the only other thing was just let me know if you needed any of those support packages. And then that's my contact details there. If anybody does need to reach out to get help, or if not, you can always go back to Andrew and he'll pass your name and number on to me and I can give you a call, or maybe one of my staff until I get my voice back anyway. So I'm sorry, that was probably really difficult listening to that voice for 15 minutes, but thanks for the time.
I think you probably worked harder than anyone else today. Thank you, Jennifer. Really appreciate that. And look, if you do have questions, I think especially about your own business, please feel free to reach out to Jennifer. Those of you who are in New South Wales, one of the things I always ask brokers when they're looking to start a business or go into business is, who is your accountant? And make sure your accountant understands our industry and some of the nuances of our industry. It's very, very important. Thank you again to our special guests, Neil, Zarko, Jennifer, and Peter. Really appreciate your time. Some great content. It's reassuring just to hear, just that there's so many people out there supporting our industry and cheering us on. You're not alone. There's people out there you can talk to. And also, if there's anybody out there, if you're running into, and I genuinely mean this, I'm not here to try to, obviously I'm associated with different organizations or brands or whatever else. If you're having some challenges in your business right now, specifically around what's happening with COVID, and you want to talk to somebody, I'm more than happy to have a chat. And if it's not something I personally can help you with, I have a fantastic network of people I've met over the years that I may be able to introduce you to who can support you. So please don't hesitate to reach out. But thank you so much, everyone who attended. I will send you a follow-up email with some of the resources that were made available today. If this type of format does interest you, and maybe if you want to get involved in some deeper discussions into the future, I want you to look out for think tanks into the future, especially if you have some great ideas or great resources, or you enjoy these type of conversations. I'd love for you to get involved. Or if you are looking to be even a guest on one of these think tanks, please reach out. But thank you so much all. Take care and have an awesome weekend. All the best.
Thanks, Andrew.